of worship. It's the way we dance, you know, the way you even dance before you put the money in the offering bowl and that kind of thing. So it appears all these things are being discouraged now. And the offering itself, it means you must make up your mind, maybe from home, that this is what you are going to give. Because nobody is going to exhort or encourage you to give this amount. So you come and you put it in the bowl, you know, at the entrance before you enter, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but when after you go and listen to the preaching and you attach, you can go and top up,
okay,
because you'll still be there when you exit.
That's a good one. The advice to the people with pre-existing conditions, I think, is interesting. So if you have asthma, you have diabetes, you have hypertension and all those things, you stay at home, you don't go to church. And then pre-recorded songs, if possible. I mean, this is like saying, okay, the church is open, you can go to the church, but you can't go to the church. I mean, this is quite interesting, and I'm sure a lot of churches will be meeting their committees or their teams to discuss how to go around or how to meet all these requirements or regulations. I think it's very detailed, very, very, very detailed, and I hope that we are able to adhere and that the figures will make sense so that the restrictions could be eased a bit more. Because with this, it's like you're going to be tied down at one place, you finish the service 1 hour, and then you are off. I'm wondering what exactly we can be getting from this. But you can go to church. This is what it is. But ensure that before you open church, you do all these things. Quite a tall order, if you ask me.
Okay. But, Eben, your issues have been addressed. Your proverb is really working with this detail.
That's the point. The president gave the churches a puzzle to unravel. And the truth is that most of them cannot unravel this puzzle. It's difficult, operational cost involved, congregational size, the stress. Because if you're having even fewer people going to come to church, and the truth is that even at this point, the economy is difficult. You have a reduction in offerings and even tithes. Now, if you have to go and buy PP, buy disinfectants, buy all that, do fumigation cost, pay electricity and water running for the period people will come to church, you cannot sustain it. And that's why I said clearly.
The big churches will be fine.
Which big churches? Yesterday I told you.
Those having 2,000, 5,000.
You listen. Yesterday I told you that within this week, churches are going to issue circulars to say that we are not going to church. As I speak, I have the ICGC press release before me, and this is
they keep sending it.
No, let me just tell you that. This is ICGC. This is ICGC. No, this one is on the Citi News page. Please check. It's been there. No, this one is on the Citi News page.
Yes,
it's on the page. This one is on the Citi News page, and this is ICGC, and this is one of the organized churches, and they have numbers. Now it says, the presbytery of the church has considered the directive issued by the government of Ghana for the commencement of church services on the 7th of June 2020. In line with this, the presbytery hereby direct pastors and ICGC local assemblies as follows. Non-opening of ICGC churches. No ICGC local assembly shall be open to run in-person church services until so advised by the presbytery. All ICGC local assemblies will continue to fellowship together on air and online as we join the General Overseer on Sundays for services as we do now. Let me just quickly jump and come down. It says, if they decide to go on with the normal church services, these are the things they will consider. The trend of the virus infections countrywide. The reports on the spread of the virus in the districts where ICGC assemblies are located. The preparedness of the local assemblies in various districts to run church services. They conclude by saying, we are mindful of the need for our congregations to gather and worship freely and openly. However, the current situation demands that we also consider the health and safety of all congregants. We pray that God will grant us the wisdom to offer the right guidance to the church in these uncertain times. And Vivian, this is ICGC. This is a very organized church. But this is the reality.
Yeah, they are looking at everything.
I counted the guidelines. There were 29 guidelines.
Yes.
29.
That's true. 29,
But
that's true.
A part of it for the mosque, but a lot of it for the church.
The mosque is
Even
minus
the mosque,
the
they
29.
will struggle because yes, you are talking about one mat, one person, and all that. There are a lot of things that they will struggle to fulfill. So, for me, like I said, this was a proverb or a puzzle. That's the reality, and it is up to you to determine that this, in as much as I'm being given a certain amount of liberty, it will cost me more, or it may even cause more harm. So let me just advise myself. In fact, we interviewed the presiding bishop of the Methodist Church, and he has also said that this Sunday they are not going to church.
Yeah.
They are going to study the measures and determine whether they have the ability and everything in place to be able to go with the measures before they will go. And this is the Methodist Church. It's not a one-man church. It's a very organized church. And so for me, it's interesting, but the guidelines are obvious that, hey, this is a risk we don't want to take. And you see, that's the point. And okay, the truth about worship is that when we say that in the house of the Lord there's liberty, see, you have to worship in liberty, in that freedom, and feel that kind of freedom where you can pray, you can praise. During worship, somebody can fall down because of the power of the when the person is falling down, you want to go and hold them. You are not supposed to be touching people. See, the reality is that this is impossible. It's impossible, and I think that the president.
When you get into the spirit, and then people start.
There's so many things you cannot control.
Well, what happened?
And so we are going to just open ourselves for a higher risk, and I think that the president has really done a good job on this one. I'm telling you, because the point is that they kept coming to him. We need to open chair. We need to do something, but they should also see now that our cases are not going down. As we speak, we've crossed 8,000. Very soon, we are likely to hit 10,000 before the week ends. And this is the reality. And you look at all this and you want to go. I mean, I read a story from one of the websites where evangelist Lawrence Tete was complaining that the guidelines are just too difficult, and that the president should have engaged properly and all that. The reality is that they cannot. So I am not surprised that once we've got a breakdown of the guidelines, you know that this is almost a no-go area.
Let me add a few from the our brothers and sisters who are Muslims. They also have the same, I think about 18 the same as the Christians, but they about 5 that are just for them, which is they have to ensure each worshipper uses their personal mat, which has become a big thing, one man, one mat, or they disinfect the mats provided by the mosque before and after use. Ablution should be performed in the house by adherents before they enter the mosque. They must use easily removable footwear such as slippers. And then they must allow people to come out of the mosque to collect their slippers one after the other instead of the crowding at the entrance. And also they must put a bowl at the entrance just like the Christians of the mosque for the offering. So quite interesting, or the ablution from the house.
Because, well, I'm sure they might have consulted imams, etc. But in my limited understanding and knowledge of Islam, I thought ablution was done just before you enter the building. Yeah. And the essence of that is to ensure that you don't have dirt and all that on your body, if I'm right. So if you are to do ablution from your house,
you might as well pray in the house.
Then you might as well pray in the house. I know the Muslims also like a lot of congregational prayers, but again, I'm not sure the minister would make such a big statement without consulting the key people in the Islamic faith. So maybe this is something new to all of us, that you can perform ablution at home and then walk to the mosque to pray. So that's fine. One man, one mat. That's interesting too. So it means that you have to come with a mat from home, or you pick it from the church, from the mosque, and they have to disinfect it just after you finish.
Yeah.
Wow, that's also a tall order. So it means that you'll be disinfecting mats almost on hourly basis. That will be interesting too. I think that the measures are strict. Yes, the freedom has been given, but it will be difficult to exercise your rights within these freedoms, because it's almost as not having it. And now you can't blame anybody for not giving you the freedom, but now a lot has been put on you yourself. Fulfill these things and then do it. I think we're in interesting times.
And also, you know, the chief imam sets up committee to ensure compliance with government guidelines. The Office of the Chief Imam is to set up a committee to ensure compliance of government guidelines as Muslims return to the mosque in the midst of COVID-19. I don't know. You know, the chieftaincy minister said that one of the guidelines is that churches and mosques must set up task forces. Task forces that will ensure compliance. And some of these task force people, we are told, has to include health personnel and all that.
So
and all that should be cost to themselves. I don't think government stated that is going to borne part of those costs.
No, I think the task force, every church has an area of talent.
But it's not everywhere. It's not everywhere. Let's not assume that it will be everywhere.
Certainly not everywhere.
But do you know that even leaves me worried?
Why?
In as much as we expect a bit of the responsibility from them, it will just then look as if government is accepting the reality that it cannot wholly do the monitoring by itself.
No, it can't.
It can't. And that's where the danger comes, because if you think that you can rely on the magnanimity of the conscience of the church itself or the mosque itself to enforce those laws without you yourself doing a certain amount of monitoring, then we are even doomed.
They say the government says they'll do the random enforcement checks to ensure the compliances, to ensure compliance. Where necessary, the state security services shall ensure enforcement of these protocols. And then the church or mosques or other religious bodies that violate the laid down protocols will be dealt with appropriately. A church or mosque or other religious organization in violation could be closed down. I don't know why they don't say they'll close down. They are using the could. If you violate, just close them down.
Yes.
And then, so you will explain that to us later.
Language.
The could and must. And then the leaders in charge will equally be held liable. The district assemblies and monitoring teams are on hand to ensure compliance with the directives. Now, we are also told that every church or religious body must register with the Registrar General and their church or worship premises registered with the appropriate municipal, metropolitan, and district assembly. And then the Ministry of Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs, the local government in collaboration with health officials will continue to monitor and evaluate key indicators to establish the transmission or levels of the virus. I think the last one is, they say for the contingency arrangements, if there is an unexpected outburst in infections within a public event or community, government has put health workers and security services, including the police service and armed forces, on standby to coordinate a rapid response of human resource and logistics, and if necessary, to cordon off, impose a curfew, trace, test, and treat infected persons in the affected community. So if there's a spike in an area, we can see a curfew or a lockdown.
I mean, they've said that before.
Yeah.
I remember the last time the president was lifting the partial lockdown.
Yeah.
We talked about targeted lockdowns and possible curfews.
So you shouldn't be worried.
They never happened. I mean, Vivian, whichever way you see it, whichever way you see whatever we are doing, the point is that we are taking a risk. Whichever way you see it. But then also you can't blame the government too much, because, like we said, life must go on. So certain risk have to be taken at certain point. Sometimes the only option you have is to take a risk. And in this situation, every country is taking a risk. There are people who open schools and realize that their cases have spiked, and they've gone back. I mean, if the government feels in the next 1 week or two, mosques and churches really start operating and we begin to see certain trend that it is leading to a spike, we will just call back. Just go back and say, hey, we said we will open, but we think it's not safe per the data we have. And we can always go back.
Okay.
You know, so I think that we just hope that things don't go that bad.
Okay. So somebody has a legal question for you. He says, this is Ray. He says, please, I want to find out from Selam if the president has a right to reopen the university, because I think it should be done by the academic board.
Interesting question, because the academic boards or the university council, I think it should be the council of the school or the school itself. But when they were closing the school, who closed the school? So I think the Imposition of Restriction Act has taken away some rights, you know, and coupled with the thing that we are not in normal times. And the president didn't just say that universities should start the following day. He gave them some time. So if the council or the academic boards have to quickly meet and look at some modalities and know what to do, it can happen. Of course, if the universities come back to the president and say, Mr. President, this is what you've said, but per our analysis and ABC, we think we'll be putting ourselves at a higher risk. This is what we suggest, ABC. I'm sure the president will be minded to listen. But given the way things run, I think the directive is good. The directive only means that work can begin, so we can begin opening universities from a certain date. Okay. So the councils will have to be called to action and see what can happen. But the answer to that really is that we are not in normal times, and the president is acting based on law.
Okay. Okay. Well, I can see some other points on the education one, but I'll take the wrap up on the religious one with a few of your messages, and then we'll go to the education bit. This one says, good afternoon. This is Aram from Adenta News Site. It says, fumigating a church premises to prevent infection only on the facility surfaces, but doesn't prevent infected persons transferring the virus from a person to the other. The protocol is too much, so don't know why we are opening the churches. Okay, this one from Samuel from Apam says, Vivian, the issue is simple. Looking at all the conditions to be fulfilled before opening churches, I strongly believe many churches, if not all, cannot meet these requirements. And then this one says, okay, this is education, so I'll wait. Then the final one says, Vivian, the Pentecost church in my area, their opening prayer is 49 minutes, 20 seconds. So this, people are just interested. Okay, so guys, let's move to the education one. I'll let, today the Minister of Education at the press conference also giving us details on the modalities and how they intend to ensure that we adhere, and also explained some of the questions people have been asking and all that. So let me quickly take his video on what he said, then I'll give you some other pointers from that presser, and then I'll pick your thoughts.
When the junior schools, senior high schools do open, there will be no visitors allowed for a period that they are in school. Parents cannot go and visit their kids for that period. And the junior high school is going to operate a shorter school day so that playground activities would not be permitted. Assemblies will not be permitted. The kids will start school at 9 a.m. and by 1 they should be done and go to school. Breaks will be had in the class. The students will rest between lectures, 45 minutes. They will have a rest for 15 minutes before another, and a maximum of 4 lectures a day, and they can go back to school. Like I said, there will be no mass gathering, and all class sizes are going to be split to ensure the social distancing protocols. We do know that average in the senior high school, maximum class about 50. So we want to maintain classes not more than 25. And in the junior high school, not more than 30. When you go to some West African countries, they have their national exam. In fact, Ghana had a national exam plus the WASI till 2014 or 2012, thereabout. We had the SSCE, and we had the West Africa Exams Council. We have discussed elaborately with the Ghana West Africa Examination Council, and they are doing a Ghana-specific exam because the other countries are not operating.
Okay, so I think one of the issues raised is the issue of the examinations. If other countries haven't lifted or eased their restrictions in terms of education, and we write a common exam, what happens? But the minister has addressed that one for us. But I'll quickly go through the 3 categories in terms of tertiary, the SHS and the JHS, and then the general one quickly, and then I'll pick your thoughts on the education bit. So the tertiary schools, institutions, they reopen on Monday, June 15th. And then we're told only final year students are allowed to go. Then they should have 6 weeks of academic work, then 4 weeks for exams. They must split all classes. Private tertiary institutions are to provide to NCT FTE, 2, 1, the number of staff, 2, the number of final year students. And then all non-Ministry of Education educational institutions are also expected to reopen on Monday, June 15th. Now, foreign students who are outside the country and are identified will be allowed to return, granted their country will allow them to exit, which is interesting. Then let's come to the SHS. Reopening is Monday, June 22nd. Final year students, SHS 3 and SHS 2, go track only. 6 weeks of academic work and then 5 weeks for WASI. All classes must be split, not more than 25 students in a class. All day students in boarding schools will now become boarders. Day schools will have enhanced daily health protocols. Dining will be in batches in boarding schools. No visitors allowed. You can't go and visit your children. So guys, schools are unavailable for religious activities. And then there shouldn't be any sports or sporting events. And then for the JHS reopening, it's Monday, June 29th. Final year students only, JHS 3. 11 weeks of academic work, then 1 week for BEC. All classes must be split, not more than 30 students in a class. Classes will be from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. each day. That's a reduced school day. No breaks outside the classroom. Schools will have enhanced daily health protocols and schools will be unavailable for religious activities. Also, no sports or sporting events. So that's what we have with the education bits. My people.
Interesting points as well. Very detailed again. The fact that all students will be provided with face masks and hand sanitizers is good. How is it going to be? Are the face masks going to be the reusable ones or the disposable
They actually
ones?
stated washable and reusable.
Yeah.
So the enhanced sanitizers. So I'm sure every school will have to, I mean, I don't know whether it's a dispenser type or I don't know whether they'll be giving the small ones. So everybody keeps it for a while so that, you know, you have it in your bag and you can apply it. However, foreign tertiary students who are outside the country and are identified will be allowed to return, granted their country will allow them to exit. This is just like, say you have easier restriction for the churches. Yes, you can come, but you cannot come. So if I'm in the US or I'm in the UK or I'm somewhere, and you say, well, how will I come? Because people are not traveling generally. Yeah. And so, I mean, I don't get how.
I think they
actually your country is not allowing.
So that's why they added the condition that if your country is going to allow you, otherwise you are missing out.
They would allow you to come in, but it has to be your country allowing you out first.
I think added to that, a more convincing proposal for me would have been the fact that people who are unable to return, I mean, we should know right from the onset that, you know, we have these receipts for people who fail papers. And sometimes they write it before graduation and that kind of thing.
Would you want to resit?
No, I mean it's not a resit.
Yeah, no, like would you want to repeat?
No, but if it's impossible to come in or it's difficult to come in, why do you want to risk it? So if an arrangement is made like that and made public even at this point, that people who will be unable to attend or to come, we will see what can be done in terms of arranging, you know, supplementary, the word is supplementary exams for them. I think that will be more reassuring. Now the question is, if I'm unable to come and write the exams, what happens to me? You know, will I now have to go find out what happens to me or what? I think the information should have been put out there right from the onset so that it's clearer for everybody. So far I've not heard, in fact I didn't listen to the full press conference, but I've not heard anything about testing the students. You know,
no, he was asked that question by our own Kojajiman, and he said they wouldn't do that.
All right, so of course I can understand why they won't do that, because of the cost involved, because of the logistical issues, and because of the numbers. Yeah. But all these students in senior high schools will become boarders. A lot of issues there as well, feeding, etc. We are going to bear the cost of that, which is fine. I would think that we will test these Form 3s because if somebody has the condition or the virus and the person goes now into the boarding house, it means everybody in that dormitory will be infected. So I think they should really look at this boarding thing and look at how they can run some tests at least for final year students. I don't know how that will be, but because young people also get the virus, and people are coming all from everywhere.
Yeah, the thing is, you don't know where anybody has been.
Yes, so I come, I look good, asymptomatic. We get into the dormitory now. Somebody starts infecting people, and now because they are together, I mean, it will spread just like that. They go to class. So dormitory, people come from various classes, meet in the dormitory. Now everybody takes it one and go. They go into their classes. That will be something that we don't want to happen. But I think because of the boarding element, the subject of testing should be looked at. Of course, I also know that for 11 weeks or 12 weeks that we've had this, we've not tested more than 230,000 times. And so this SHS Form 3s are close to 300,000, maybe 400,000. We are told
that all of them put together roughly 450,000.
You know, so it's almost impossible to say that you have to test all of them. So, like Eben has said, it's a risk, yes, and it's a risk that everybody's taking across the world, and we are taking too. We are all praying and hoping that, I mean, nobody comes in with the condition and infects the rest of the people. Very, very important. And did you also hear that temperature, thermometer guns and those things, did you mention that?
Yes.
So every school will have it, and at what point will people be tested? Will it be dormitory by dormitory, or how is it, was that said?
Yeah, I'll pull that for you in a bit. But while I'm doing that, even you can make your submissions.
Yeah, I think the guidelines for the schools are quite comprehensive too, and I was a bit impressed with it. But of course, we can only judge the efficiency better once implementation starts. Of course, we'll be monitoring to see how these things are implemented. But on paper, they look really good, and I think a lot of thinking may have gone into it. One thing that I am very confident about, which I know they can ensure so well, is social distancing. And that shouldn't be too difficult to do because you only have final years coming to school. What that means is that there's enough space in every school. There's enough space in every school to spread the students at every point. So as for social distancing, we'll be able to ensure it, whether in the dormitories or even in the classrooms. We should be able to, because you have so much space to deal with. So I think that makes me comfortable, because we know that the bigger issue in all of the safety protocols is the social distancing is critical. So if they're able to ensure that, that is positive for us. The tests, I thought about it also, but of course, I've also thought about the cost of testing and all that. And unfortunately for us, our rapid testing kits are not ready. I am thinking that if perhaps the rapid testing kits were ready, because you can do a lot at a go and you can get results that fast, it could have been useful at this point, probably. But I'm told that we've not approved it yet. It's going through certain processes before they could be approved. But until that, it will be really difficult to do the kind of testing we're expecting. But I also think that bringing in the day students to be modest is still better, because if they are coming every day and going, that is actually more dangerous. Coming every day and going.
But schools that do not have boarding facilities, and then the JHS, they'll be going and coming.
At least you are still limiting the impact. It's still better, you know. So whichever way, like we have said, there's a risk element involved, because you definitely cannot cover all the loopholes. That is a reality.
But should it be compulsory to return to school if the parent does not feel safe about the child going to school? Well, should it be? And do you have that option? Because we are told in other countries that raise or ease the restrictions, some of them had transition protocols for parents who didn't feel comfortable about letting their children.
I think that makes sense. I mean, I don't think you can. Then what it means is that
I wouldn't feel comfortable having my child.
So what it means is that parent is taking a decision to distort the child's career progression in terms of education, in terms of the progression. So if you are going to be judged based on the exam result to be, let's say, promoted to the next class, and you opted not to go, then that's for me to say you're ready to maybe repeat because you didn't write the exam.
No, but you don't feel safe with your child. It's just examination classes.
That's the point.
So,
but the examination is important for assessment.
No, but what I mean is external exam, usually. So I get the point Vivian is making, and I think we need clarity on that from the ministry, so that if
you can do homeschooling.
I can tutor my child at home, or get a teacher I trust to teach my child at home, and I think that's safer. I should not be stopped from doing so.
Yeah.
So I think it's an option that we need to explore.
Should be available.
So that if the exam time reaches, Now, I'm just going to write the exam and come back. You know, the risk is a bit minimized. I think it's something we must actually explore.
It's a good question.
Because same way you don't want to go to church, you don't feel comfortable about the situation.
It's true.
These are children. I mean, you don't know what will happen. They're saying they wouldn't be allowed to do A, B, C, D. But we all know when it comes to implementation, we are struggling with it. So if parents are not comfortable with letting their children go back to school, I think there should be an option for them.
I think so. They should be able to do it. I think it's a good question to ask. I am thinking we can actually create some news item out of that. We want to reach out to the education ministry and ask whether there is that option. And truthfully, if there is that option, many parents will take it. They will.
No, because a lot
many
of
parents will take it. People who can afford for their children to go through and pay extra teaching, maybe because if it's just one teacher coming to my house to teach my child, I feel safer than putting the child in that environment.
But again, the subjects are many. One teacher may not be able to teach all.
Anyway, it's interesting.
It's an interesting one. Okay, let me take a few questions on the education part, and then we'll look at them. So this one says misplaced priorities. This is from Bernard. This is from Prince Henry. He says, misplaced priorities. Are we the only country with WASI and BEC candidates? Is WAEC ready to conduct examinations for only Ghanaian students? Until all the students and teachers are mass tested, I will advise them not to go because they'll be risking their lives should they try. And if the NIA and EC can work, they can't. Okay, I don't get the last part. Okay. This one says, all health workers know what we need to do, but sadly, powers are not allowing us to. We clearly know where Ghana is heading in the absence of a vaccine or cure. The only tool left to effectively contain the spread is mass testing for identification of cases, and approved RDT kits are already out there, and all we need to do is to import and use them without having to calibrate locally. We really don't understand why authorities are refusing, but we can't talk because of it's a political season. So this person says he's a health worker. Then this one says, this is BB. With just 1,400 tested on 31st, we had 227 cases representing 16.21% positivity. Transmission rate is very high and we are in deep trouble. It's no more a matter of if, but when we are going to regret our actions and inactions. Restrictions lifted and intended voter registration, so we should brace ourselves for the worst. We never learned from Italy and others. And then this one says, with this phase one easing at this uncertain era, there could be more infections. So my take is that the health facilities should be well placed to be able to handle more cases. People are still not comfortable with these easing.
No, of course, people are concerned, and rightly so, because I mean everybody should be concerned. And even when the president was talking, he sounded concerned actually. That is why he tried to impress upon us to respect the protocols and take the precautionary measures seriously. So because it's not something you can just by looking at somebody know whether the person has or not until the person starts manifesting symptoms. So yes, it's fair that people are concerned, but the other point too is that we can't be in lockdown mode forever. I mean, the world is beginning to open up. Countries in Europe, etc., have begun opening up. Of course, people can argue that they have seen, their worst, in the past few weeks. But there's also the other argument that there is a risk also of a second wave of infections. But the world cannot be in a lockdown mode forever. Things must happen. Yesterday, I read an article from the Standard newspaper about how they are trying to prepare their year 6 people into secondary school. They want them to come back because they feel that they did not have good time to maybe say goodbye and things to their colleagues before, and a whole lot. And these are mental health issues. A lot of the final year students who are home are a bit concerned and they are worried because they don't know what is happening for them next. University people, you are just about submitting your than it is for sophomore years people or people who are somewhere in the middle and not approaching external examination anytime soon. So yes, it is good that we start easing it, but again, freedom comes with responsibility. we must also be responsible. Only that, you know, we don't have a good precedent in terms of how we have managed the power we've been given. Partial lockdown was lifted. Even in the midst of partial lockdown, we saw people flouting it, etc. So it's going to be a test of our ability to adhere to the rules. And I'm happy that the president always leaves a window that when it gets worse, we will do this. Only that when Obuasi was growing, we didn't see much of action there. But what's important is that window is still there. If anything comes up, curfews and localized lockdowns are available to deal with those situations.
Okay. I want to take you to Kumasi because my virologist at the Kumasi Center for Collaborative Research, Dr. Michael Owusu, he's warning that we'll see a possible hike in cases because of the easing in the restrictions. Let's pick his thoughts quickly.
Then you keep easing these activities. There is a possibility that some people may not entirely adhere to these measures, and therefore the number of cases may go up. So it's not surprising. And as I said, increasing infections is something we have to live with. We have to know that the numbers will always go up, but our ability to pick them early, to isolate them, to manage them so it doesn't result in death is where we have to put our efforts so we can reduce deaths that come along with these surges. I think that easing restrictions should be part of our cycle in getting out of this virus. You can't forever lock down. You cannot forever sit home. So it's something that will have to come, which is what has started. But easing restriction must go along with measures, measures in terms of the preventive measures, the surveillance measures, contact tracing measures, testing measures. So I think that the testing capacity is still low for me, and I will wish that once the restriction easing has started, we should also gradually increase the number of testing sites and supply more reagents so that once there are surges, this can be managed. I think that with the testing capacity we have now.
So issues of testing again coming up, and especially with us easing the restrictions.
I think the points he made are solid. I mean, he's a medical person. He understands the reality, and that's the truth, because we know that everywhere that some amount of easing has gone on, they found cases going up. It's a reality. But I think all he says is that once he admits the fact that we won't be under restrictions forever. Yeah. So we definitely have to open. But when you are opening, then it means that you should reposition your health system or your measures so that it deals with a possible spike. And that's where he talks about the testing, that he thinks that we do not have too many of the testing sites, and he thinks that we need to boost it. And that's why we brought up the conversation about the rapid testing kits. If that was ready and we were sure of the results it would give, I think it would really help a lot, because the easing is going to be a lot. I think a few days ago on the big issue, I was listening to one doctor who said that he was making reference to a research done at Oxford University, and the research concluded that the opening of schools mostly leads to about 58% spike in cases. Yeah, and so obviously what we are going to do is a huge risk, and so we should be ready and put our strategies in place so that once people get it and you're able to detect faster and things happen, then it means that you curtail a spread. Yeah. You know, then when you because once you get the case, you isolate, you treat, and now you are curtailing a spread. That's what has to happen. So we have to see some strong measures from the perspective of the health ministry in terms of what we are doing to ramp up testing and all that. I think it's important.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. We need to do a lot more testing. Testing is the way to go. But you cannot, because you ask yourself, how much of the testing can you really do? Yeah. The US is tested just about 5-6% of its population. Ghana is tested just around that, about 7% of the population, because our tests are around
almost 20,000.
Yeah, 220,000, 218,000 actually, and our population is around 31 million. So 10% of 31 million will be 310. So around 7-8% of the population we have tested, which is not bad. But we need to actually do a lot more testing. The president said something I want to quote from. He says our ability to trace test and treat persons with the virus has improved considerably. Now we have a large army of efficient contact tracers. We have expanded the number of testing facilities from 2 to 10 across the country. And we have increased appreciably the number of quarantine, isolation, and treatment centers. So I think what he's trying to say with this is that we will open up, or we are opening up. Of course, we appreciate or acknowledge the fact that more cases may come. But when the cases come, we appear to have what it takes to deal with it. So now we know how to, our ability to test, treat, and treat persons with the virus has improved considerably. What does that mean? If cases come up, we know how to deal with it. You know, how do you deal with it? You deal with it by doing enhanced contact tracing. And now we have a large army of people who will do that. So I think this will give us some comfort, though not absolutely, but it kind of gives us some understanding of what the situation is on the ground. And you have to juxtapose that against the fact that we can't stay in a lockdown mode forever. Things must happen and things must move. So basically, yes, I think that is where we are. Very difficult decision, but something has to be done, and something has to be done about it.
Okay, let's wrap up with the global scene.
Global, we have the USA, of course, leading with 1.86 million cases. 107,000 people have died. In the last 24 hours, 136 plus people have died as well. 615,000 people have recovered. A third of their population, or the sick population, or the infected population, has recovered. And the US has tested 18 million times, and that's a population of 330 million people. Brazil has 529,000 cases, 30,000 deaths, 211 recoveries, which is also about a third or so. They've tested 930,000 times, and that's for a population of 212. Russia comes in third with 423,000 cases. In the last 24 hours, over 8,800 cases were recorded, 5,037 deaths. I mean, Russia has a lot of positive cases, but their death rate is actually low. At 423,000, they have recorded just 5,000 deaths, which is quite good. 186,000 people have recovered, and they've tested 11 million times. They've tested 11 million times, and that's for a population of 145 million people. Spain, UK, Italy, India. India in the beginning had some good reviews, but now they have 201,997 cases. In the last 24 hours, over 3,600 cases have been recorded. They have also recorded 5,638 deaths, and then 96,000 of those people have recovered, and they've tested almost 4 million times, 3.966 million times, and that's for a population of 1.378 billion people. France, Germany, Peru, Turkey, follow in that order.
Okay, so for the global scene, even Africa.
For want of time, I'll just do the figures.
Okay.
And that's the case count for Africa currently stands at 147,099. And no, sorry, this is yesterday's figure. Today, as of today, according to the African Centers for CDC, the figure they have is 152,442. So I did the calculation from yesterday and today. Between yesterday and today, Africa's cases have gone up by 5,343 new cases. The deaths for Africa, 4,344. As against yesterday, Africa recorded 116 new deaths. And the recoveries for Africa, 61,808. Sorry, 63,661. And this is the new figure that added on from yesterday is 1,853 recoveries more. South Africa still leads the pack. Egypt follows Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, and in that order.
Okay, you can give us some of the headlines for Africa, if you can, and if there are some interesting global headlines,
okay,
you
so
can take them as well.
Ethiopia needs 133 million face masks in COVID-19 fight. That's according to Ethiopia's health minister. He told journalists that the country needs 131 million face masks in the next 4 months to fight the pandemic. And also, Tanzania health minister says virus cases are declining. Tanzania's health minister has spoken about a decline in coronavirus cases in the country, saying the commercial hub Dar el Salam only has 4 active cases. It's surprising because this is a country that has stopped giving data for 1 month. So it's surprising they are now claiming that they are doing better. You know, and so Uganda postpones reopening of schools as cases rise. Okay. Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni has postponed the reopening of schools for final year students for 1 more month. The president said reopening of schools was risky as the country did not have enough kits to test learners every 2 weeks. Okay. That's quite interesting compared to what's happening in Ghana. Nigeria to reopen churches, mosques and hotels. Nigeria is to reopen places of worship and hotels from Tuesday, that's from today, as most of the country begins the second phase of the easing of coronavirus restrictions. Okay. So those are some of the news.
Interesting about the Uganda case. So Uganda has tested just 96,825 times, and they have a population of 45.6 million. So the number of tests they've done is woefully inadequate when you compare that to their population. But an interesting thought that is just occurring to me. So the EC, we understand, is beginning some pilots. So EC is started working for it. Now our borders have remained shut until further notice. The EC will use about 40 days for the registration exercise. So if the situation doesn't really improve, so the borders remain shut, and Ghanaians who have traveled outside for some quick business out there want to come back and register, what will happen to them? Because the EC would have closed its registration maybe before they would come. That is that may provide some difficulty for us. People will see a lot of legal challenges, etc. on that, and I think it's something we should keep our eyes on.
So yeah, we'll look out for that. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Ebenezer Fenyi, that's the head of the City Business News Desk for Radio and TV, and also Selom Adenui is the head of features and articles for Citi TV and Citi FM. And I'm Vivian Kai Loko. Thank you so much for joining us. See you again another time.
The coronavirus pandemic has changed life as we know it. Given that it's not just a passing cloud, it's no longer a question of what will, but what does.